What's going on, fellow A-plusers, fellow Force users? It's your host, Adam Perez, and we're back once again with a brand new live review of The Acolyte. This week, we're getting into episode number 5, titled Night, and boy, was this one hell of an episode this week. We didn't have the full council with us yesterday, but this episode deserves a full council meeting, and we've got everybody on board today. All of our Jedi Masters here today. Crystal Kyber certainly coming back once again. Will Polk as well. My co-host Stewart, and yours truly. The Force is strong with this panel this week, man. May the Force be with you. I hope everybody's doing fantastically well. We missed you, Stewart. We missed you, Crystal. It's good to have you guys back. How you been?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad to be back. We have so much to talk about in this episode. So I'm really curious to hear our 4 thoughts because the last time I was on, we all had like different opinions about things. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, I'm really eager also. What's going on, Stu? Good to see you, buddy, man. We missed you last week.
Yeah, I definitely missed being here last week, and I'm really excited to talk about this episode this week because, like Crystal said, I got a lot of thoughts on it.
You know, before we get into this week's episode, briefly from the both of you, since me and Will were pretty tough on last week's episode, I think we ended up giving the episode overall a C+, but I just kind of want to know overall your guys' brief thoughts on episode 4 real quick.
I think a C+ is very fair. I did like it more than the 3rd episode, but there was just some things that weren't really working for me. Like, I mean, with Quamir being like overly suspicious, I was like, it has to be something else. But I did like it more than the 3rd episode.
I gotcha. And I did see you you did a review this past weekend on another YouTube channel. You guys had a great show.
Thank you.
Yeah, some great discussion pieces for sure. So I'm glad you got the opportunity to talk about it a little bit. Stu, what about you, man? Quick overall thoughts on episode 4 before we dive into the 5th episode.
So I was not a fan of last week's episode. It actually almost made me it almost brought down my viewpoint of the entire show because of just like I already felt like the show was kind of like, being very slow with this mystery, but that was fine because there was always something kind of intriguing to keep me going at the very end. And there was always just at least something going on in the last 3 episodes, but then episode 4 happens and like there's literally nothing that happens until like the very, very end of the episode, right when I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get intrigued, and then it ends before I can really, really get into it, Now, it wasn't a terrible episode overall. There were some things I liked about it. Like, I do think it was actually pretty well shot. I love the area that they shot it in, just, very beautiful scenery and all that. And then that final shot that we had of our, mystery master behind this whole thing. I thought that final shot we got of him just like creeping out of focus, that was so freaking cool. But again, it was like, dang, that's all we get though. I felt like that was all we got during that episode. So that was like the main disappointment for me.
I thought the final act of episode 4 was really, really strong. I mean, it definitely gave me some menacing chills seeing him just kind of, like you said, out of focus, coming into frame. I was like, oh my God. It just gave me like Harry Potter Voldemort vibes for some reason. Like it's just super creepy to me.
I could see that.
But yeah, I'm glad you guys. Thank you so much for letting us know about your thoughts on last week's episode. I do want to give some shout outs to people that are joining us in the live chat. We got Scotty. Scotty, what's up, Scotty? Good to see you in the house, man. We really appreciate it. And look, guys, as we go through our reviews and give our thoughts on episode 5, we always want to know your guys' thoughts also. At the end of the day, these are just simply our A+ opinions. We always want to know yours. Feel free to interact with us wherever you're watching us live at. I think we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter. So wherever you're watching us at, feel free to join in on the conversation and have some creative criticisms about the show if you'd like. But you know what? It's that time, man. Episode 5. We got ourselves a brand new one. It's interesting. My girlfriend, before I even watched this episode, she came up to me and she says, how are you liking The Acolyte so far? And I said, it's good. I'm enjoying it. I know some people say it's just okay for them, and that's fine. I says, but for me, I need episode 5 to come out of the gate swinging. Like I'm going to need episode 5 to put me on my ass. To really sort of change the perspective of this season now that we're at the halfway point. And man, to me at least, it did not disappoint. Crystal, though, how do you feel about it, though? What did your overall thoughts on episode 5?
I really liked this episode. I really like that we got a lot of lightsaber fights, which is something that we've been missing from Star Wars for a while. I know that we had Ahsoka, but I didn't really like Ahsoka, so we're not going to talk about that. But this episode was so much fun, and we got to see the Jedi like be Jedi, which was very exciting. I thought the reveal of Quimir being the Sith was a little bit on the nose, and he even had like a little cheeky line of, "Did you really not know it was me?" And I was like, "Okay, I see you. I see you winking at us." you know. Um, I really liked Quimir as the Sith, though. Like, he was really scary. I like how he's able to like switch up his personality. And then I'm really curious of what is going on with Soul. Like, is Soul the actual bad guy? I know we had talked about this 2 weeks ago, but
Yeah.
there was just some interesting dialogue between Quimir and Soul that I feel like there's some like underlying currents there. Like there's something that they're talking about that we don't know, and I'm really excited to see it be revealed to us. I will say some of the dialogue and the editing did feel like a little bit cheesy to me. Some of it felt like a little like Marvel-y, like the part where Jackie like ignited her second lightsaber and she kind of like looked down and then looked up. I was like, God, just get on with it. It was
That's
like
definitely a Marvel moment.
right. But yeah, I'm excited to see where this keeps going. This episode really did it for me. I'm glad that we have stakes. It sucks to see our characters die, but at the end of the day, we needed stakes in Star Wars. So
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Just to jump off of your Quimir comments, in the sense of between him and Soul, you feel like there's more going on than Brendock situation, or you think he's trying to reveal that there is more to Soul's story when it comes to Brendock?
I think there's more than Brendock. Like, I think there was the line where Quimir says, well, he still has the mask on, and he says, did you not recognize me? Like, could you not sense me? And when we know on Brendock, it was like a clan full of women witches. So there's something there. I don't know if he's like an old Padawan or like what that relationship was, but there's something going on.
I did have I saw something on Twitter because I love just seeing other people's theories. Somebody believes that they may in fact be related.
It's just because they're Asian.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. But
he's Filipino, he's Korean.
Exactly. They're not the same Asian.
But I didn't come up with a theory. I just
right.
But when you mention the idea of like because Soul even says something like, it does seem a bit familiar. And, I just don't, I was thinking to myself, like, well, is that because he realizes this is the same guy that he wind up meeting, or is there certainly more to it than that? So yeah, I'm really fascinated by it, but I'm glad you brought that up, Crystal, for sure.
That was kind of my thought, is that he was just referring to the time that they were kind of crossing paths, like when they were investigating back in the second episode.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
That's what came to your mind first too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the first time I watched it, I thought, oh, maybe the Padawan, he was a former Jedi Knight or something like that. But the second time when I watched it, I was more thinking it was just the incident in the shop.
And just to jump off of what you said too, Crystal, in the recent article, for those of you who haven't checked it out, Entertainment Weekly has a fantastic Inside the Acolytes episode for episode 5, where you got the opportunity to sit down with the showrunner along with really all the big names in this week's episode. And talking about Quimir, the article says, the showrunner anticipated many would figure out the Quimir/stranger connection before the unmasking, and was totally cool with that because she wasn't trying to fool anyone in the first place, intentionally leaving breadcrumbs along the way. She says, I think a good twist is not about hiding everything from the audience and then throwing it on them like, hey, this is what you didn't see. We hit it so well that you didn't see this, is what Hedlund says. She says, I think a good twist is telegraphing what's going to happen, and then once it does, executing it without an ounce of pity or sentimentality. And I think a lot of that has to go into what you stated about, like, for me, even though I think we knew or had an idea as to who it was, I think Manny's performance of being able to switch it up and not be that same guy that we saw in the in the store, and actually showcase his true self. I think that to me is what really won me over in regards to it. Not so much a surprise of like, haha, this is who it is, but like just how different of a character he was able to pull off in that,
Yeah.
Will, what about you? What do you think about episode 5?
So I'm gonna be the person here who's just so I have mixed feelings about this episode. It was, let me just out from the outset say it was enjoyable. I did enjoy watching it, but I think its strength, one of its biggest strengths, was also, to me, one of its really highlights again some of the problems with this series overall.
Mm-hmm.
I felt, clearly the lightsaber battle was, it definitely kicked ass. Choreography, everything about it was just really on point. The Saul really got more invested in Saul and Quamir as far as their dynamic. I think of the characters that have been introduced in this show, those are the two who I feel most vested in. So I think the reason why the lightsaber battles, in particular between the two of them, worked so well is because they did build up that tension. I did feel, and I think it's because I did feel that investment in those two characters. Whereas all the other people who we lost, I think, yes, some stakes are there, but I don't know. Still didn't land for me, as far as, I just didn't feel vested in Yord. I didn't feel vested in Jackie, and I think it just goes back to some of the earlier parts of this show that just didn't really do a good job of fleshing those supporting characters out, for at least for me. So that was the the good and sort of mid about how I felt about the episode. The part where I feel like the strength of this episode, which was the epic battle, uh, really sort of, to me, kind of hit a further point of how thin. I don't know. I want to say thin, but I just felt like we got 20 minutes of action just to like, just to get that surge. And like Crystal said, we haven't seen a good lightsaber battle in a long time in Star Wars, and I just feel like this was the adrenaline rush that we all needed, fans needed. I think you're seeing that reaction of it, but it just, to me, it just, like, again, highlighted some of the deficiencies of the show and how there's still aspects of it that still hasn't fully reached its potential. Now we still have 3 episodes left, so we may get that. We may get there. But I'm enjoying it. I think what's going on, it's just a discussion we just had with what's going on with Quimir and Soul and Brindok. What's the true mystery that is going on there? I know a few weeks ago I did reference, is Saul really the bad guy here? So it may not be how I put it out there when we had our review a couple weeks ago, but I think there is definitely more to happen especially whenever you see May and Osha talking about what truly did happen that night. So those are some of my overall thoughts as far as just to get the discussion kicked off.
Yeah, I in regards to Jordan, Jackie, I can understand where you're coming from in that regards. At least for me, for the Yord character, I didn't really have that connection to him. I think if anything, for me at least, what got me was just the shock of it.
That was a shock. I mean,
No,
no.
you did kind of expect last week that like nobody was making it out of here, and I thought for sure at least Soul, Yord, and Jackie were at least making it out. But you said you didn't think anybody was going to make it.
It just, for various reasons, and I think one, just to hold up the integrity of the canon that has been established. So that, and I guess that's the hard thing about prequels. So I just didn't. I also joked in full disclosure that I thought we would get another flashback this week, but I was wrong.
It's
But,
coming, bro. It's coming.
Yeah,
It's definitely-
yeah, but yeah, I just just the way things set up, to what Leslie was just talking about, how things are telegraphed. Whenever we got that amazing reveal of the um, Darth Teeth or Smilo Ren or whatever you want to call him, I was just like, yep, they're all dead. They're all dead. Saul will come out of this because he's got incredible plot armor, but all the rest, anyone else, all the bets are off. So.
Yeah, man. I totally was not expecting that. Were you expecting a Crystal? How about you, Stu? Any of you guys?
The deaths of Jackie and Yord, I was not personally.
No. What about you, Crystal?
No, I wasn't. For a while, it was just the three of them, and I was like, of course.
Yeah.
I was like, of course. But then when Jackie died, I was a little shook, and then when Yord died, I was like, oh, we're going there. And I felt a little bit worried for Soul for a little while also. But going off of what you said, Will, I have to agree with you. We didn't really get things explained to us, the relationship between Yord and Osha. We didn't really get to care about these characters and them dying. It was kind of like for shock value because they're our main characters. But I really wish we knew more about them. I wish we cared about them more. I want to be sad that Yord and Jackie died. I didn't really feel like this devastation from Soul, even though that's his Padawan and he's kind of like responsible for them. It kind of just got glazed over. So I really agree with you on that.
And I do think that's the detriment also to the shows being so short.
Mm-hmm.
This is a prime example of Star Wars live action. Like, give us 45 minutes, bro. Give us 55, 52. Can we push an hour? I mean, you look at something like The Rings of Power, we got over an hour-long episodes.
Yeah, or even, you don't even in the span of the 30 minutes or whatever. Like, for example, we talked about this last week. Whenever they're walking through the forest and stuff, those were, you could do the exposition dump as far as just things to make it work. And we talked about this too a few weeks ago, as far as like whenever Jackie and Osha were talking in the woods, there were, it just felt like, I don't know, this weird editing or just really bad dialogue that just things just felt stilted and lifeless. And it was just sort of plugging, so I get, like Stewart said, and I think there was, and Crystal, you too, the shock value was clearly there, but it was a shock for sure, because you expect these main characters to maybe make it to further than episode 5, but at the same time, it just didn't land for me in a way that I was just like, I felt it. And I guess maybe that's just how I like watch shows and stuff, and maybe I just really like to feel things for the characters that I if I'm investing time in, it's like a good book. I want to get invested in it. I just didn't feel that way.
Yeah, I mean, I will agree, especially with Crystal, in the sense of like the Yord and Jackie Yord and Osha relationship. While we know that they were close just from episode 1, I definitely wanted to have seen that explored a little bit more. I mean, they only had really like 2 pieces of dialogue with each other this entire season, like the first episode, and then was it last week's episode when they were actually about to head into the woods together. So I really definitely would have loved to have more. For me, Jackie hit me hard for some reason. I don't know why. I think it was the way that she went out. It was such a surprise to me, especially once he unhooks the second lightsaber out of nowhere and just quickly gets her. And I will say I do disagree with you, Crystal, in the sense of like I felt Soul's pain in that moment when he reaches out and he yells. Like, for me, jung-jae, I think emotionally really carried this episode for me at least. And so when Jackie goes, me and my girlfriend literally had audible gasps in the house. We could not believe that she was gone. But I do think out of all the side characters, I think Jackie has done the best of at least interacting almost with everybody, whether that be Soul, Osha, Yord also, right? So she felt like a solid ground point, I thought, for me at least, in the sense of her continuing to go through. So that one at least really did shock me. Stu, what about you, man? What did you think about episode 5? What are your brief thoughts on this one?
So overall, I think this is my favorite episode so far. My complaint, I think, Crystal, you mentioned this. I definitely think like the biggest weakness of the episode was the editing. They try to do like kind of the classic transitions that we know and love from the Star Wars franchise, but I don't think it works when you're doing it like in the middle of a fight scene. Like when you're doing a fight scene and then you try to do the I always forget what the names of the transitions are, but like when you do kind of like the iris out or the swipes to another scene and you're trying to do it, because like usually that's supposed to be like saved for when like one scene is completely over and we're moving on to the next part of the story. But this was all one part, like part of the same fight scene, and we're using these like transitions that are usually meant to like end the scene and then just moving on to a different part of the scene. So I just don't think it worked. I think like the cuts were really rough. And then I also kind of agree that there were definitely like kind of cheesy moments in it. Another thing I will say is that while I do definitely agree with Will that I feel like Yord and Jecki just weren't as fleshed out as I really would have liked them to be in order to make the death hurt a little more than it could have, I still do think that the deaths were definitely impactful. Mostly because while I didn't like those two characters as much as I wish I did, I loved Soul. And so when, you really got to see his pain, you really felt that, I think, especially, I think Adam, you brought that up. Like, yeah, his pain, you definitely felt that when he lost both of his Padawans or, his current Padawan and then, previous Padawan, of course. So I thought that was like extremely well done. And I love the fact that, I think if it was just the three of them on that planet, their deaths wouldn't have quite been as shocking. But I think it was the fact that we had the three of them and a bunch of nameless Jedi who we all knew were going to die in that episode. The moment they introduced all these Jedi that we had never seen before, we're like, okay, red shirt, red shirt, red shirt, they're all going to die. So when you mix those like obvious deaths in with deaths that you don't see coming, I think that's what made those deaths like incredibly impactful. I also, this is the most obvious thing that I think all of us are going to agree with, but the choreography for the lightsaber battles in this episode were absolutely incredible. I loved what we got. I think that like it was funny because even though I think we all knew that Quimir was going to be revealed to be the villain, I was curious on how like impactful the reveal was going to be because we all saw it coming, and I was curious on if we were going to find him intimidating at all, and I was kind of surprised. It's not that he was the scariest like villain that we've gotten in Star Wars. We've definitely had like some more intimidating ones out there, but with what he was with what we got, he did an amazing job. When the helmet was broken, we got the reveal of his face. The shift in his personality was like, I think, just spot on. I love he, even though he still felt like that same character that we saw when he was like acting like goofier and less confident, it still felt, it felt consistent enough to where you can see that character that we get introduced to putting on those kind of personalities. Like he seems like the person that would be super deceptive. And so I loved all that. Yes, the dialogue was definitely cheesy at times, but I think because of the performance, I was willing to kind of forgive the cheesier dialogue at times. I think just all of that was great. I also was kind of surprised because I think that when I was like last talking, I gave my theory of what if Soul is the mastermind behind everything. I guess a part of me is kind of relieved to just see that wasn't the case, and that like this is the villain, that what you see is what you get. It's very much like they're not trying to add like an extra layer into it, because that's not really the point of the story. The point of the story is really focused on Osha and May. The villain is just there, essentially. He's kind of like Snoke in the sequel trilogy, in the sense that he is a villain. He is probably the most powerful antagonist in this, but it's not what the story is focused on. He's just there as another obstacle, but the real story is still focused on Osha and May, pretty much. So overall, again, my favorite episode so far.
Yeah, I think for me too, my favorite episode so far. I will piggyback off of the editing real quick too. I feel like editing has been a problem for this series the entire time. The transitions to the scenes, like I will say there are two editing moments I was a fan of in this episode. And I know usually the side swipe doesn't work, but it worked for me at least two times. And that's during the lightsaber battle with Saul. Anytime Saul like rushed towards the screen or rushed back into battle, the side swipe kind of followed him. And I thought it was actually really helped for great pacing into kind of the next scene. Where the editing gets me though is that literally the final scene of this episode when Smilo Ren winds up seeing the body and he covers her up and it goes to black and you get the iris and then the music is just bland. Like it's just, I don't know what it is. It's just really weird timing, I guess. Like the editing sometimes really throws off the episode a little bit. It worked for me a little bit in this episode, but I will say I do think editing for me has been a problem this entire show. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would say that like every episode has ended really weirdly.
Really weird. Really weird.
Like why did it end there?
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the editing, maybe it's like more of the writing, because I feel like maybe the editing is having to fix some of the mistakes in writing, or maybe they're not getting certain things, because I noticed that the pacing is just kind of like up and down, up and down. There's not really this like nice little arch to it. So I'm wondering if it was like a writing issue and then editing is kind of like suffering through that, you know?
It's definitely possible. Editing trying to cover up some writing issues, the transitions from scene to scene. Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Fix it in post.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to piggyback also on something that you said, Will, about how you felt that this episode was like all lightsaber battles, right? We didn't really get any character exposition. I think the reason why I was kind of okay with that is just because I feel like this show's kind of been lacking something, and it's been the action for me. I mean, I know that we've seen some cool lightsaber moments, especially episodes 1 and 2 with May versing against some of these masters and whatnot. But a lot of the other stuff has just been story. And so the idea of them sacrificing one episode for high octane action with a couple of like, hey, there's still more here. I was kind of okay with that. I was kind of okay with that.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, it was as that's why I had the mixed feelings. I mean, I enjoyed the action. You'd be cold not to. And it definitely, and to your point, Crystal, it's definitely better. Like I think about the lightsaber battle in I think it was also in episode 5 of Ahsoka. And talk about flat. I mean, I remember like Twitter was going batshit crazy about it, and I was just like, "Why is everybody?" I was like, "Man," I was like, "Really?" This one was like, this gets to some of the top.
It's okay, Will. It's okay, Will. You could say it.
I'll put it out there. I think it's in the top 5 as far as like some of the lightsaber battles.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
Especially the battles. I think that as far as the scale of it, reminds me of Attack of the Clones. With Stewart, I thought about that when we were talking about all the red shirt Jedi. I thought about that where you just had like just a lot of Jedi, in a battle, that kind of thing. But I do think the intensity, especially with Saul and Chimera, especially after when we have the moment where Saul almost does succumb to the darkness.
Man, he should have chopped his damn head off.
Yeah,
he should have chopped his damn head off.
I was wondering, like, are they going to do it? Are they going to do it? Because I still had some doubt about. I mean, is there another person out there who that Chimera was actually reporting to? But they didn't go there, at least right now. But that was some good, and that's why I was saying where I thought you had that good tension in the battles, and that's what makes lightsaber battles go from just spectacle to like memorable.
Absolutely, bro. Absolutely. It definitely had a lot of, like you mentioned, tension, some great storytelling in there, great performances. It really just added to an incredible lightsaber battle. I mean, we had like 5 different lightsaber battles in here or some shit like
Mhm.
that. Like we had Jackie versus Darth Teeth. We had Soul versus Darth Teeth. We had Jackie and Soul versus Darth Teeth. I mean, there's at least like 2 other ones in here that we had that I'm sure I'll wind up bringing up. But yeah, man, I can definitely see why you maybe put it in your top 5.
And then
Um,
I also really do like the 2 Chekhovs that we kind of got from the previous episode that like played a part here because you know, we had when we got introduced to the bugs, they like it was brought up like in the previous episode that they are attracted to light, and I do love that that was kind of like what they used against the against Quimir at the very end of the battle. And then the other thing too, and I do think this is actually going to play a part in episode 6 because I think that this will lead to not only Osha hearing like Osha hearing May's side of the story from Quimir, but I think it'll also lead to May hearing Soul's side of the story, which she may not actually have known before, and that is the whole thing of Soul, both in this episode and the previous episode, promising to come clean about everything the moment they get to the ship. And then the last time we see him, he's with who he thinks is Osha on the ship, and I do think that's gonna play a part. Like I do think that May is going to hear a perspective that she didn't know about when she was a kid.
that's a good point too. Yeah, I do think episode 6 should be pretty good, or at least I'm crossing my fingers in regards to some of the reveals and what Soul has to talk to May about. So we'll see how it goes.
Mhm.
My quick overall thoughts on this episode. Man, I gotta say this to me was by far my best episode of the season. I absolutely loved it. I thought the pacing in this episode was fantastic. I felt like I personally got a like no chance to breathe throughout this episode. It felt like it went from scene to scene to scene to scene and didn't really slow down until we got to the May and Osha kind of moments in here. So I was really glad that we finally had sort of a change of pace when it comes to this particular series. I thought the directing was on point in here, pretty mesmerizing. I remember the very first shot of them coming from above and with the zoom down towards Osha, she's laying down. I immediately thought to myself, like, okay, this is going to be a pretty special episode. So I thought the directing was pretty on point. This is probably the first episode that I've had where the music just hits me. I think with the exception of the way that the episode ends, I think the music did a fantastic job of help carrying a lot of these battles and these moments that we wind up having in here. Really great set design pieces. There's a really cool shot when Osha wakes up and you get to see literally where that force push sort of threw everybody with the red sand, red dirt across the ground. I thought that was incredible, along with the shot of Darth Teeth and Soul facing off against each other with the trees cut in half. It was very samurai-esque in regards to Leslie Headland getting into her samurai influence, like a samurai movie bag sort of thing. So I thought that was pretty badass. We got the opportunity to see some really cool force abilities, I thought, in this episode. The idea of you're talking about that he felt like the Sith was sort of like in his head a little bit. We see him even communicating with May as he's leaving, just a sense of dread. So it does feel like he's got some, I don't want to say some sort of like psychic ability, but it does feel like he definitely has an interesting force ability there and maybe a little bit of a healing factor. I didn't know how to necessarily read that final scene. I thought Osha was dead for a little bit, but maybe she was just injured. And it's like he touches around her wound and she's kind of comes back too. So I am kind of curious about learning a little bit more about that, but it seemed like he had a little bit of a healing factor. I thought the Sith in here really left me with a sense of just horror and dread and menace. Like just the tone and the vibe of this episode just really captured me. Like it made, just kind of jumping off of what Stewart had mentioned, when you get to see Quimir really change that gear and become somebody completely else. Like I took this dude very seriously. Like I Master Soul, I'm just like, do not make any sudden moves, Master Soul, because this guy is as crazy as it gets. Like it's just a lot of uncertainty with him. And I don't know if I've ever felt another Sith kind of portray that before. You know, he may not look menacing, but it's the aura and the vibe that he's given off that I'm like, damn, I would not want to be in the same room with this dude. Like, it just makes me feel uncomfortable when I see him. Kind of something that Crystal talked about, the stakes, the stakes of this show getting, really being thrown through the atmosphere here. Even though Carrie Ann Moss wind up passing and dying in the very first episode, maybe that was like, a little switching, was it a little switching? I don't know what they call it, but switching things up a little bit for us. But the fact that we got Daphne Keene's dead, the guy that plays Yord is gone. I mean, right now it really feels like nobody is safe in this series, with the exception of maybe Saul. So those are some of the things that I was a really big fan of. I think if anything, if I had issues with it, still like you guys, the dialogue at times kind of gets me. And, I praised her in the first 2 episodes, but I'm getting more and more concerned about Amandla Stenberg in regards to some of her performances in here. I feel like she's such a stronger actress as May, but when it comes to Osha, I don't necessarily know how I feel about her. And I do want, like, I don't know all of Amandla Stenberg's past work. I haven't really seen how much stuff she's done, what she's been in, but maybe asking her to do double duty might be a little bit too much in this regards. And so I feel like I gravitate to her more as May than I do Osha. I think May feels more intact with her emotions, even though she seems batshit crazy sometimes with the back and forth for her. But Osha just feels like, former Jedi doing things by the rules, emotionless at times. And so I don't know what it is, but the dialogue on top of some of the uneven performances I get out of her is probably some of the things that kind of stood out to me. But overall, man, I thought this episode truly kicked ass, and I felt this season needed sort of that adrenaline dump for us to change the pacing of this season. I don't know what the last 3 episodes are certainly going to look like, but I think that they've put us on a really good path of uncertainty. Changing up the script a little bit now that we've got May and Osha in 2 completely different situations, and I think more is certainly going to be revealed. So I think episode 5 put us on a really great path to hopefully a strong end of the season, but we'll see.
The just to add on to what you were mentioning about her performance, so the very end of the episode, depending on what gets revealed a little bit more about May going forward, she either did a really, really great performance in that last scene between her and Osha, or a really, really bad performance. And what I mean by that is there's specifically the moment where she tells Osha, the Jedi have brainwashed you. Clearly you're brainwashed. You don't know what's going on. The way she says it like she herself has kind of been brainwashed. And if that's on purpose, that was really good. But if that's like on an accident, then I'm kind of like, that was so flat the way she delivered that. But again, I want to wait and see how the show plays out, because I am starting to actually think that might have been done on purpose,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know we got this week. It's the week of Parent Traps, and in our shows. But yeah, at first I was, as you were talking, Adam, I was there. I was also in agreement with you with some regard with her performance. But now that Stewart brings it up with that that ending scene in particular, I whereas before I was kind of like lukewarm on May and Osha's storyline. That's a very good point, Stuart, that you bring up, and I see it in a different light now.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I might be a little bit more vested in what's going forward with the. I joked with Adam earlier today. I was like, yeah, I saw the Parent Trap before. I thought it was the better than House of the Dragon, but this is not too bad either.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't think of that. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Scotty says Lindsay Lohan guest appearance.
Right.
I saw a light bulb go over your head there, Crystal. Were you thinking about something?
Yeah, I did have something to say about the whole you're being brainwashed thing. I kind of interpreted it in a different way. When Quimir was speaking to Soul, he was like, take off your helmet. And Quimir was like, no, so you can get inside my head. And then later on, when Osha was, or May was talking about Osha being brainwashed, I was like, maybe Soul implanted like false memories into her head. And maybe that's like the brainwashing that they're talking about. So that's kind of how I took that.
Interesting.
Ooh.
Interesting. I didn't even pick up on that, but I
I
kind of
hope
dig
that's
it.
not the case, but that's interesting.
He's
See,
innocent either way.
I
Yeah,
He
my
didn't
thought
do it.
of
Whatever
the-
he did, it's
Yeah.
fine.
my thought of why that line was brought up originally of so you can get into my head. I thought it was just kind of like to let us know, to remind us as the audience that Jedi can sense these kind of things. I thought it was because they kind of wanted to plant a seed for like later when it seems like Soul is like falling for May's trick. It's going to be revealed later. Oh no, I could sense you were May the whole time, or something like that.
Shout out to Smilo Ren's helmet, by the way. For those of you who don't know, apparently his helmet is made of a mineral called cortosis in Star Wars. It says cortosis was a metal that had a very high energy absorption rate and transmission coefficients. It says it was able to allow even the energy of blaster bolts to dissipate. It says one of the strongest materials in the galaxy, cortosis could even withstand the blow of a lightsaber and briefly short out its blades. And I would assume it kind of works the same way as like Magneto's helmet of keeping people from being able to get inside your head the entire time.
Yeah. That's I saw that. I guess it was something that was introduced in the comic books or the legends, and they just brought it into canon as far as live action. So
cortosis.
Deep cuts.
Yeah. That's Leslie Headland, man, getting into her Legends expanded universe bag.
Yeah, you can definitely that's definitely going to be one of my pros. I wanted to you kind of just to jump to that, but
sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But no, the mind trick stuff too. That was another piece of dialogue that I thought was a good callback to an earlier episode as far as with their mother, what they did with Master Torben. And so there's multiple ways you can like look at that scene as far as getting into someone's head. And I like the idea, Crystal, that maybe that think about to that line. I mean, that could be what Kamir was doing as far as manipulating the thoughts, and same with Master Soul. I mean, the whole Jedi mind trick stuff. So there's a lot of given Leslie's. Clearly she knows Star Wars in and out. I mean, there's you may have thoughts about other things with this show, but as far as the knowledge of the lore, she's there. So and utilizing the lore, we've talked about that here on the show. How the show really taps into a lot of deep cuts and lore. So that line and that as far as bringing up her mom again wasn't by accident. Or the earlier line as far as keeping the mask on. So definitely want to put a pin in that as far as how that all comes together with what really happened that night in the Coven.
Yeah, if we have another Crystal moment of, hey guys, what's your new theories at the end of this episode? I might have one for you guys. Marcelino says this was a step up from the previous episode. It kicked into gear. Yeah, I totally agree, Marcelino. Good to see you here, buddy. Glad you showed up today. Let me see. Scotty also says, I love the way that lightsaber SFX looks from shorting out to reigniting as well. Yeah, the reignition was pretty interesting to see how they did that special effects wise.
I have been really loving just the lighting that they've been using with lightsabers and like kind of more modern Star Wars. Like they had some really good shots in the sequel trilogy, and then like in this episode in particular, just again the lighting of the lightsabers with like just the way it reflects off of them, because I assume they're using like actual like lights that they're just like later coloring over in post production. So it just looks really good.
Leslie Headland did mention that they did create new lightsabers for them to battle in. She says she wanted them to build lightsabers they can actually battle with. So I do believe, if anything, they probably light up on their own also, able to fight with them. I think she said the ones that they had made for like Ahsoka and other series were like extremely heavy or something like that. So they went ahead and actually made unique lightsabers for this particular series. I do want to turn the focus here just a little bit to what I think is definitely the man of the hour here in good old Quamir, as he winds up revealing himself from under the mask, which I really love this mask, guys. I really do. I think they're actually selling this as like a black label on StarWars.com right now. I think you could probably actually purchase the helmet. But once the helmet comes down and we get the opportunity to see who it is, a lot of us, like we said, kind of expected it, but definitely not in this particular way. He's got some great lines in this episode when he's speaking opposite. A couple of them in here. Mind you, also, Manny Jacinto did almost 100% of his own stunts. The gentleman that you see under the mask, 99% of the time, that's Manny himself. He says, you attack me while my back is turned. Not very Jedi of you. I thought that was a nice little dig at Soul there. When Jecki dies, he says she was just a child. And it got me when he says, you brought her here. Crystal, you mentioned this one. What type of master? When he says, what type of master doesn't show his true face to his pupil? Why don't you tell me? You know, like, damn. That's like that Z. You
right.
know,
like, oh.
Scotty says, Darth teeth more like Darth arms.
Oh,
snap.
For real, though. I was like, oh, okay.
The I've accepted my darkness. What have you done with yours? Talking to Saul a little bit, right? Bringing up the idea of like, I want a pupil, an acolyte. There was another one in here about like, I don't make the rules, the Jedi do. I mean, he almost had like a comeback for almost anything that Master Soul was gonna say or could possibly say, and it definitely looked like it just not only frustrated Soul but like froze this man to his core a little bit in regards to like, what do I like, the fact that you could tell like Soul was almost out of his element a little bit, like he just did not know how to handle this particular guy. But I love the I love the energy that Manny Jacinto wanted to bring to this episode.
Yeah, definitely. The freedom again, to getting back to some of the callbacks to everything with the witches, and clearly the Jedi were on that planet because they were afraid of other people messing up the order of the galaxy, where they're the only ones who can use the Force or the thread or whatever you want to call it. So so that was another reference. But whenever I didn't say this last week, Adam, but Stuart, whenever we were talking about the two characters, Quamir, I guess I couldn't help but think Clark Kent and
yes,
like an evil Clark Kent.
Yeah, he's an evil. Yeah, it's like Bizarro or something. Yeah, where he's just like it's that was I was getting those vibes, especially as we're getting that prior to the reveal last week, and I didn't. It was one of those things after the show. I was like, dang it, I meant to say that while we were recording, but yeah, totally that was the vibe there today. And just I never knew, it was props of just his acting chops. I never knew he had that range because most people probably know him best from The Good Place, and the character I always would jokingly call him Jason from Jacksonville. But he really has some range, and that's what, to me, that's what stands out and makes this episode memorable for me, as I mentioned before, because the way he and Lee were just playing off of each other and creating that tension.
Yeah, so much tension between those two. I love the emotion they wind up bringing. And you're right. I don't know if I've seen him in anything else, honestly. This is my first time, I think, really being introduced to Manny Jacinto, and I was blown away by his performance in here in this week's episode. I can see why Leslie Headland wanted him specifically for this role for sure. Impressive stuff. With that out of the way, let's get to our next segment, y'all. This is going to be our light side, the light side of the episode for some of our pros here. Anybody have any pros for this week's episode in particular that you really want to gush about and talk a little bit about?
I just did with Manny. I mean, that was my big one. But also, Stewart brought this up too. Was the I know we with episode 3 we're one of the roly polies as far as those creatures, and so I did like the way that they really how they brought those back and show use that element to carry the story forward. So with all the issues that the show sometimes has, I mean, I will say that they are doing a good job of, if they drop something out there, it's not for just there. Even though we gripe about the show's runtime sometimes at moments, but at the same time, all the things that they've been putting out there, they're using in some form or fashion. So I think that is another pro. That now that we're into episode 5, I'm starting to see all these little breadcrumbs that, as Leslie called it earlier, starting to come together.
Yeah, it didn't feel like it was just kind of thrown in there now that we have seen the next episode. They definitely are utilizing what they're putting down for sure. Marcelino says, does anybody get vibes of the black phone when it comes to Darth teeth? Maybe it's because I just saw that movie. It's so fresh in my mind.
That's pretty funny.
I get vibes from that, and I get vibes from The Smile, that horror film.
The thing I majorly appreciate about this episode, I always appreciate it when a show can do this, but it kind of makes me appreciate just the previous episode a little bit more. Like, in a way, like, I still do think that there was a little bit too much padding. Like, it didn't feel like build up in the previous episode. It felt more like padding up until like the very end, but it did make me kind of appreciate that even though we had all that, at least the payoff was like worth it. At least it wasn't like we got a little bit of payoff but then more padding. It was like, no, this episode is just straight up payoff, along with even giving us a little bit more to get us intrigued for the next upcoming episodes as well. So I love just the overall turnaround that we got in this episode compared to the previous episode. I think because of just how underwhelming the last episode was, it just made me appreciate this one so much more.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you there, Stuart, for sure. You got any, Crystal?
Yeah, I really loved Soul and Quamir in this episode.
Oops, hold on, sorry. I'm not trying to take the spotlight, I promise.
We just look at you while I talk. It's fine. It's less pressure anyways. Oh my God. Anyways, I really felt like their last interactions together, or like the last third of this episode, they really carried it. I think the dialogue between them, it was like giving us enough to wonder, but it wasn't giving it all away. I think it was Yord had said something to May, and he was like, yeah, he's crazy. I can't tell what he's going to do next. Like, show us that. Don't tell us that. Like if they're going to tell us something, I want it to have like all these undertones. And I think that's what Quamir and Soul were doing with each other. Along with the lightsaber fight, I felt like there was so much storytelling within the lightsaber fight and with their dialogue. So I think that was done so well. Favorite part of the episode for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love the moment when Soul is about to chop his head off, and Osha stops him, and I literally got up out of my seat. I was like, no, no,
right, yeah, girl, what are you doing?
Like, no, why are you doing this? Like the man literally slaughtered everybody. So yeah, it definitely made me jump out of my seat for sure.
But Adam, it's not the Jedi way.
F that, bro. Like,
tell that to Anakin.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like, come on, man. I think this would have been acceptable, right? Soul can do no wrong. I would have been like, yeah, Soul, good job, Jedi.
Oh my God, wait, I just had an idea.
Uh-oh.
What if Quamir wants Soul to be his acolyte? Like, what if like he was gonna like let him have his Anakin moment, but like stop him at the last minute? But like if Soul was gonna pull through with that and like try to behead him, like he would have definitely gone to the dark side. We see that Soul is like is the only Jedi to stand up to him.
We need you in the writer's room. They need to hire you right now for the next show.
Us. Like, I don't know. I was just going off of you guys. Like,
she had a force vision there for sure. I love it. I need to get you like a light bulb effect or something over your head.
Right. A
I
little
gotta
beam.
I gotta get Will's ascension chant going, and then I gotta get Crystal's light bulb. That's what I gotta do too. For me, for some of the light sides, can I gush about the lightsaber battles real quick, please?
Do it.
The double impaling I thought was sick. I'm so glad that we got the opportunity to see that on screen. Him using the force ability to yank somebody onto his lightsaber. Um, you know, I remember in past interviews leading up to the promotion of this, Daphne Keene talked about all the work that they put into the lightsaber battles and that they wanted to top the battles of the prequels. And I remember everybody, I mean, my God, everybody was just laughing at the thought, like, how absurd is that? Like, Nick Gillard is probably pissed off at these comments after all the hard work that he did on the Phantom Menace and the prequels and stuff. How can they possibly top it? Well, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but they came pretty damn close. Enough to certainly pat them on the back for sure in regards to what they were able to accomplish on screen. I mean, you can still have the prequels up there if you want to, but I would not be upset with anybody if they said that these fights come certainly a close second in that regards. I had a fantastic time with a lot of these battles, from the idea of seeing, first off, I think they did an incredible job of blending not only lightsaber battles, but hand-to-hand combat too. I mean, the idea of going from transition from sword fighting to literally seeing Soul hit Quimir with like a 3-4 hit combo and literally stunning the man to take a couple of steps back. I mean, they literally did an incredible job with the fight choreography, and everything just seemed so incredibly seamless in here. And it wasn't even just Soul and Quimir that got hand-to-hand combats. We had May versus Jecki in here, which I did not expect whatsoever. Seeing Jecki force push her through a door, and then like it was all over the place. Everybody literally got in on the action in here. And so we had a May versus Jecki fight, Jecki versus Darth Teeth, Soul versus Darth Teeth, Soul and Jecki versus Teeth. And I think I also want to highlight the Soul and Jecki fighting together, because if I'm not mistaken, I don't think we've really seen the 1-2 combo like that since Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan versus Darth Maul, and maybe Obi-Wan and Anakin facing off against Count Dooku in episode 3. If there's any other live action like Master and Padawans that have fought somebody, let me know in the comments. But the fact that we got to see Soul and Jecki taking on a Sith in here, it just definitely brought me back to the prequels for sure when I thought about it. And I just thought the choreography, the chemistry, who comes in, who comes out sort of thing was just as seamless as it was in the prequels. So I had a fantastic time with the lightsaber battles, man. I definitely would certainly hold them up there. That's why I'm not even mad at you, Will, when you say top 5, right? Because I think some people can easily put it in their top 3 if they're in like a younger generation than we certainly are. And so I was a really big fan of what they were able to do. And just bouncing off of what you guys said, Lee Jung-jae, hell of a performance in here. You can see the struggle in his eyes, the desperations, that walking of the fine line of what a Jedi should do and shouldn't do. Him seeing the loss on his face when he loses people that are certainly close to him, and just bouncing off of somebody like Manny Jacinto in here was just brilliant performances, man, that really carried this episode. And I thought really pushed us over the top for me, man. So I had a blast with this episode. I really did. But now that I'm done gushing, let's talk about the dark side. Any cons in this episode for you guys?
I think I kind of mentioned mine with the editing is kind of like the big one. It wasn't like it was bad consistently throughout the whole episode, but it's just that when there were bad transitions, they just really stood out a little bit more than they should have. Like when you notice editing, then it's bad editing. That's kind of like the rule when it comes to editing.
Yeah.
If you notice an edit, it's bad.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Couple. I mean, I guess some of it's a suspension of disbelief. But the light the inconsistencies, I think, with the light. Yes, yes, it was good that they pulled back the bringing the creatures to utilize him for carrying Chimera away, but at the same time, it's just like we got all these lightsabers and stuff floating around. Why is Pip the special one that actually works this time to like take him away? So, I mean, it's a quibble, it's a nitpick, but that's what we do when we talk about these things. But and then also I guess Basil. I just feel like Basil's just there to sell.
No.
It's just there to sell, just a cute animal for Christmas. I don't know if it's a con. It's just sort of more observation.
Yeah, they're going to be selling plushes of him for holidays
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the thing in regards to the light, I do agree, and it's too bad too, because I feel like it could have been an easy fix. Like if they just made the thing brighter than the lightsabers instead of like around the same brightness, I think then it actually would have made a lot more sense with them all carrying him off at like kind of towards the end of the episode. But because the way it looks, it doesn't look that much brighter than the lightsabers that we already see already ignited. Yeah, I do agree, Will, like that it could have been done a little better.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, I like no, and don't Scotty. I apologize. Please
What about you, Chris?
Our cons.
I did it again. Jesus, I'm so sorry.
The cons, I think we've all kind of mentioned them already. It's really the editing, which feels kind of clunky, the dialogue, the overall writing, and the storytelling to me. It doesn't feel that strong to me. And part of me is like, okay, well, maybe if we did get like hour-long episodes, but I'm like, what if this was a movie? It might be more tighter. I feel like the story just doesn't feel very tight. Like there's a lot of loose ends, but there's not enough at the same time. So it's kind of like this weird in between of like, I want more, but the more that I'm getting isn't really that good. I want more relationships between the characters. I want less exposition. I want more showing it and less telling. But the showing and the telling that we're getting, I don't know. It's this weird middle ground for me that is kind of like, it's really cool, but it could be better.
No, I totally get you. Real quick, shout out to Joseph. What's up, Joseph? Appreciate you certainly coming through today. I will bounce off of what you said there, Crystal, in the sense like the idea of like, could this have been a movie? Could the writing have been tighter? Do we need longer episodes? I get like Marvel television series vibes from this in the sense of I feel like a lot of the Marvel television series are made to be made to be one gigantic movie broken into kind of like 6 parts, or 6 or 8 episodes. And for me, like that's just not television, like it's like they're trying to tell a movie in a TV series format and it just doesn't work the same way. And I feel like that, and that's why I'm hoping Marvel changes it up the way that they're doing things. But I feel like with them both being Disney, maybe they have kept sort of that same model of it, and they're thinking to ourselves, well, maybe we view the Acolyte as a movie, but we want to break it down into 8 episodes, and maybe that's where some of it is going. So that's one of the reasons I personally would think. But what do you guys think? Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I think that's 100% why the pacing is really off in the show is because of that. It really feels like this was written to be a movie, but they wanted more TV content for Star Wars because the TV side of Star Wars seems to be doing like more success for Disney than their movies. So it really feels like they just wanted to break this up into a movie, so it had to be like rewritten and then re-edited very last minute in order for that to work, or like right before shooting they decided to write and re-edit the script so it fits the format of a TV show.
Yeah. Speaking of Marvel, I think about the Marvel Spotlight show Echo, and that was, I think, one, if not the first, maybe one of the first or few things on Disney Plus that has dropped all at once in the Netflix model. And I think this show, honestly, we've talked about this before. this to me really would have just been okay if they had just dropped them all at once, and so we could just binge watch it. I think it reminds me a lot of Echo, where the way things were structured, whenever I remember we were talking about on our podcast, it was good that they just dropped them all at once, instead of trying to make it go week to week. And I'm usually the guy, I want the week to week, but
Me too. Yeah.
sometimes there are some series that just would be better just to be dropped all at once.
But great con, Crystal, for sure. If I did have a personal con for myself, and I'm sorry, you guys can fire me as producer next week. I will say, just jumping off what you guys said before, the May and Osha kind of dialogue stuff, the performances a little bit. I guess we'll kind of have to wait and see in regards to the performances. I do got to bring up the damn flying creatures again. I know each of us have almost talked about them each and every time, but while I appreciate the idea that they go back and make what we had in episode 4 relevant, it made me laugh because I'm like, who wrote the script for this particular scene? Because they go back to the same area and Yord acts like he's never been there. Like he's got the lightsaber. He's like, what's going on? I'm like, bro, you literally just saw these creatures on the tree a second ago. Turn the lights off. Why? Like you were literally one of the people that said, oh, they're attracted to light. Like, bro, you know this already. So it did make me like, what was this scene? Like, I get it, but I just thought the writing was terrible for that sequence. It really jumped out at me. Like, you were just there, bro. So yeah.
Every now and then that's common for something like that in a TV show, where a character who said something in the previous episode will, say something that and act like they didn't know about in the next episode. But it's weird when it's directed by the same person. So in this particular case, it's weird because the same director did the previous episode, which means he should have known that he already knew about the bugs.
That's a good point.
And that he was also the one who pointed it out in the previous episode.
Shout out real quick to Joseph. He says, unfortunately, I disagree. I don't know what he disagrees on, but he says respect. And hey, you know what? It's more than fine, man. That's more than fine. We're not always going to agree with each other here. I'm sure there's a couple opinions we've already kind of pushed back with each other a little bit on having opposite views. So, and respect given, man. Just, feel free to express yourself politely around here. That's all we ask. Andrew, what's up, Andrew? Smash that like button. Yes, smash that like button if you like our Star Wars discussions. Going to be going live every Wednesday for you guys, 10 p.m. Central Time for the Acolyte.
Also, chat, share your light side and your dark side with us while we continue talking.
Oh, Joseph says weekly, yes. Movie, no. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sometimes the format fits different people, so that's cool. Now that we've got that out of the way, I do have to ask one question. This May and Osha swap, does Soul realize it? Do you think he doesn't realize it? How do you think they'll explain that? And where do you see the swap going?
So I'm going to be really weirded out in the next episode if Soul doesn't figure it out by sensing something being off about her, especially because within this episode they point out the fact that the Jedi have that ability to get into people's minds, to be able to sense their thoughts and feelings in this particular episode. So to have an episode where that gets pointed out and then try to have deception in that particular way, that would just be bad writing in a weird way, in a way of you had to know people were gonna point that out. There's bad writing in the sense of not realizing oh wait, I made a mistake here. But that's the kind of writing where it's no, you went out of your way to point this out. There's no way you didn't know that was something that could happen. So to me, it'll be really bizarre if he doesn't figure it out in the next episode. The way I think it's going to go, and I really hope so, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, is I think both May and Osha are going to have completely different perspectives on the Jedi. I don't know if Osha's going to turn to the dark side per se, but she's going to lose a lot of respect for the Jedi. And then while I think May keep her, lack of respect for the Jedi, I think she's going to lose that hatred she has once she hears the perspective from Soul. So basically, I think they're both going to get each other's perspectives in the next episode, and that's going to completely change both of their viewpoints. May is going to be like more understanding towards the Jedi. Osha is going to be more pissed off at the Jedi for keeping something secret from them this whole time.
Yeah, whenever I saw Basil pick up Pip and start sniffing around at the end of the episode, I figured Basil's going to be the one that's going to clue off Saul something's up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's So see, there's my Basil love.
Yeah.
But,
Go
yeah.
ahead. Well,
yeah, but that's just sort of where I think that's where, at least on the Saul side of things, he'll figure out. And I mean, I think Hymir. I mean, I kind of gathered that he sensed it. That that darkness.
Oh, in Osha.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that we have been kind of talking about a little bit over some of the things that I've been pointing out, especially when we talked about episode 4, was the idea of, I find it odd that she tends to really focus on like the negative part of her time being a Jedi. Like episode 4 for me really pointed out like the hopes that I think Osha certainly had for herself, and like they didn't necessarily come to fruition, right? Like she talked about there was almost an eagerness that Soul approached her to go on the mission, and she's like, "Oh, the Jedi Order wants me back," and he's like, "Not quite." She's like, "Oh, okay." And then when she's in the Force and she's like, "I think I'm ready to face her," and then he's like, "No, you're gonna face your past," and she's like, "Oh, okay." And there was a couple other moments in that episode where it just felt like and then when she talked to Jackie about her time, the idea of like her not being able to get rid of her attachment that she had, struggling with all the loss that she kind of dealt with, her thinking that her time as a Jedi was a failure and maybe why she wanted to leave a little bit. And then you also remember the idea that, if anything, I think it was Master Indara that also suggested the idea that she no longer kind of be on the council also, right? So there's this external factor that's kind of been pushing Osha away from the Jedi. I think her own personal inner conflict is kind of pushing her away from the Jedi as much as she tries to hold on to it. So I find this as the opportunity for her to see another perspective and really have both of their minds kind of changed here. So I do think you might be onto something, Stuart, in the sense of I can easily see this season beginning one way and ending completely differently from these two twins' perspective of them now being on the opposite end of things. Whether or not Osha goes complete dark side by within 3 episodes, that I don't know, but it definitely feels like it's potentially building to flipping the situation around for them both.
I last thing I'll say about it is that I don't think Osha is going to go full dark side, but I do find it fascinating that Quimir seems to have like he seems pretty confident that he can turn her, basically, just kind of the way like he was talking about her at the very end of the episode. He seems confident about it, and that is intriguing to me.
Right. Unfortunately, Stuart, I feel like what you said is going to happen. I kind of feel like obviously Saul would notice, but I don't feel like super confident in the writing that he is going to notice. I know someone in the chat just said, is Saul not going to see that big ass forehead tattoo? For real though, but I don't know. I just have this feeling that Saul's going to be like, oh my God, you're not Osha, I would really like to see May go to the dark side or get like swayed into the dark side, because we haven't really seen that except with Anakin, and I think that would just be so interesting and so different from what we've been getting. This idea of like good and evil and good always prevailing. Like the show's called The Acolyte, like there has to be an acolyte coming out of this show, so it would be really cool if it was May. But
you know what, I'll take one thing back. I'll be okay with Saul not being able to censor if it gets explained why he doesn't. Like if he says, well, why would I bother? I thought it was you, or something like that, so I didn't bother tapping into the Force. If there just needs to be a line to say why he never did,
Mm-hmm.
I personally think he does know. There's a moment where he says like, where's your sister? And she says something, and there's a brief pause. And as there's a brief pause, there's a musical note that winds up coming in as he's looking at her. It's only maybe like 1 or 2 seconds long, sort of thing. And then he winds up grabbing her hand and pulling him up. There's a part of me that thinks that Soul was able to pick up on it, and I think he's going to be playing along with it a little bit. Even though we got Basil sniffing around, that I can easily see Basil being the one to kind of reveal it. There is a part of me that thinks that Soul knows, and he's going to play up the part even as he tells the story and reveals all this stuff. I think eventually we will come to find out that he's known all this time.
I would like that. I would appreciate that. I think, like, it'd be pretty manipulative of him, but it would be interesting.
Yeah, we'll see. We got 3 episodes left, y'all. So they got some work to do.
Yeah.
Any Crystal, maybe we should make a segment for you, Crystal's theories, Kyber theories or something like that. Oh, thank you guys. Thank you guys. I appreciate that. Did you want to kick that off, Crystal?
Yeah. As far as theories go, I think having Soul become the Acolyte at the end of the show would be devastating for all of us because we love him so much. But it'd have to be done really well and like with a lot of nuance to it, which I really think that actor can do it. But I don't know why I'm so team Soul is the bad guy, even though I love him. But I think because it just makes the character have so much depth, which is what I want from this show. So I don't know. I want to hear y'all's theories on this.
Well, let me say I won't say I will say about Soul while I do think a lot of us want him to be hands clean, innocent of everything, there is an element of something that is just all the way through Star Wars, and that's failure, right? That's the idea of Jedi either not training their Padawans right, making bad decisions that lead them down, terrible things that wind up happening. So I'm okay if the idea of Soul finding out that Soul took part in something that he shouldn't have. Because the idea of Soul then trying to correct it and his actions after that, I think are really what is important, and just kind of connecting the dot to The Last Jedi. One of Yoda's final messages is the idea that like failure for us is what teaches us, and makes us become better people. And so there's a part of me that is kind of hoping that's the situation that it turns out to be, as much as I love Soul, man. I do.
Yeah, I don't think Soul will go full dark side.
Right.
But I think your point's right on the money, Adam. I think that's where we'll probably end up when we see the perspective of what really happened that night.
I mean, who knows, man? We were really hard on the idea of like Soul's the master behind it all. So yeah, it's really interesting.
Well, and we still have the mom. I mean, because she was not in what we have the two lead witches. As far as because I know we didn't see the one Coral, and whenever I have to go back and watch, but I don't think the mom was there either whenever they had the scene of them running out of
the mom was on the floor. Mother Anna says she was on the floor. Yeah, when they ran past.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I couldn't remember if she was or not, but so I was just wondering, like, because I saw someone in the chat mention who trained Quimir, and just thinking like with all the various the speech that he gave about the darkness, and then maybe Coral is the one who is the one who trained him. As far as because he didn't identify himself as Sith. He just said the Jedi would call us Sith, call what we are Sith. So so again, I think that too is another thing that they're trying to do to like keep the canon clean as far as what we learned in Force Awakens.
Some people were saying they noticed the Kylo Ren music at certain points in here, hinting at the idea that he might be the first knight of Ren instead of actually a Sith sort of thing. Do you think him saying that line of like, the Jedi might call me Sith, do you think that's him confirming the idea that he is Sith, or he's just suggesting he might be something along those lines?
I took it as more suggestion of what the Jedi would define
him as.
as far as, I guess, dark force users, whether it's and again, it goes back to the witches as well. I mean, these are, the Jedi are there to keep order in the Republic, and if you're having these dark forces, for example, creating life like they did with May and Osha, we're seeing examples of that in this show, whether it's the Coven or it's this other force user, which we know is a Sith, but at that point in the galaxy, it's been many years since that term's been tossed about by the Jedi.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like also you're hearing it from the perspective of someone who may be in touch with the Force, but isn't necessarily in touch with Jedi and Sith history. So as far as his perspective goes, Sith just means like dark Force wielder. So I don't think he's actually declaring himself as a Sith. So I think that, for it, because to me, I feel like a Sith knows that they're a Sith, and so his line, the Jedi would probably call me a Sith, is him confirming that he doesn't see himself as a Sith, which again, I think most Sith know they're Sith,
Yeah, I totally agree. I did love his mindset of, look, I just want to use my power freely. Like whatever I choose to use it for, why do you guys have to kind of stop me and make these rules in the sense? Like I kind of love that mentality of his.
I saw this review from Star Wars Explained, because I watch his videos a lot, and like he brought up how you look at the witches that we see in episode 3, as far as we know, whatever they're using the dark side of the Force for, whatever, it seems like they're just keeping it between themselves, and that's totally fine. But then you get to him and he's clearly using, the dark side of the Force for evil, because like the first thing that he does is he has his acolyte, kill Jedi for him. So it is kind of funny that, he can see himself as like a victim of, hey, I'm just trying to use the Force. You guys are getting on my back, when in actuality, it's like, yeah, but you're using that to hurt other people. There's that big difference there. If you were just using the Force for your own benefit and it didn't hurt other people, totally fine. But clearly that's not what you're doing. But it is, makes sense that he would see himself as still being the victim in that situation, which I find fascinating.
I do want to say this, because I know Marcelino in the chat in the past few episodes, he has mentioned this about who the master is. He has mentioned the idea of David Harewood before. And I find it interesting that Ronan is now bringing this up too. He says David Harewood is cast and his character has yet to appear. Hopefully he's Plagueis or Tenebrows. And Scotty says Darth Tenebrows is more likely master for the time frame if they stick to the established lore. So that's a big what if, but definitely a possibility. So yeah, that's the second person that I've heard in regards to David Harewood, bringing him up possibly as the master. I'm right with you. If I had a theory, Will, I'm right there with you. In my notes, I says, is Coral the master? Question mark. Because again, we didn't see her body with the rest of the witches, and I think there's some giveaways here. And Will, you picked up on this line earlier in our review when Osha says the line, "My mother could do that once," talking about the idea of the fact that Darth Teeth is able to get into his head. And so the fact that she says my mother was able to do that once makes me think, okay, well, maybe it's somebody else associated with her mom. I've also seen the idea of when we saw the last week's episode, when she does the force push, when he does the force push at the end, that just very much reminds me of the ascension that you hate so much. The power of one, as she pushed the one person, the power of two, she pushes the two, the power of many, the idea of maybe having that ability to force push like that. So I do think that there are some connective tissues that could imply the master being Coral and Quimir being her apprentice. And I don't know, maybe some fans might be upset how crazy would it be if Coral has named herself Darth Plagueis or Darth Teneber, however you pronounce the dude's name. The internet would go ape shit, bro. They would go ape shit. So I don't know if they would go that far, but I do think Coral is still a part of this somehow. And I think she might be the master after all. So not far from what you were talking about, Crystal, this past week when you guys were theorizing about like who could be under the mask. I know I was like, man, I'm really jumping on board this Coral thing. It wind up being Quamir, but I still think Coral has a part to play in this.
I would be apprehensive about Coral being like the big
big,
bad,
okay.
just because I feel like she would have gotten like a woman instead of like a man to do her bidding, especially because she comes from like a coven of like witches. I feel like she'd get like another Dothamirian or another Night Sister, and continue like that lineage. But I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
No,
No,
that's a good point. Yeah, I
that's a
agree
good
with
point.
Crystal.
But I will say, I had mentioned this last week on another podcast I was on. It feels very pointed. You know, why are they going after these 4 Jedi specifically? It feels very personal. And so I think if it were to be Coral, it would make sense. Like the motivations would make sense. You know, they destroyed her clan. They took one of her daughters. So it could go either way for me.
And Ronan says, yeah, how does Quamir even know about Soul, what Soul did to the witches?
I'm assuming probably from May.
Yeah, May probably might have told him. She did give him a weird eye when he dropped Master Soul's name in the last episode, almost like she hadn't mentioned what his name was. Like, how did you know this dude's name? But maybe I misinterpreted that wrong.
Yeah, and maybe whoever David Harewood's character is, and I will just say this the quick Google search, and shame on me for not remembering this because I watched the Hot Mic with Jeff Schneider and John Roca, and actually it was Schneider who actually put it out there about Harewood. Being just a rumor, of course, but being on the show. And
yeah,
maybe some other places too.
Yeah, I don't think it's far off. So we'll see. We got 3 episodes left. And before we wrap, this has been a longer episode than we normally do. I think this is because episode 5 was so incredible for a lot of us. But it is time to grade the episode, guys. So as normal, if you were to go ahead and bring home a report card to your family and be like, look, Mom, episode 5 of the Acolyte. Look what it got graded for. What would you guys grade episode number 5? Give me your grade and the percentage.
I would give it a minus 92. This is my favorite episode so far.
Nice. What about you, Will?
I would give it a B plus 86.
Stewart?
I'm gonna give it a minus 90%.
You know what? I'm gonna give it an A minus also. I'm gonna go with you, Crystal, on a 92. Man, excellent. So divide that by 4. A minus for this episode at 90%.
I think that's our first A that we've given the show.
That's our first A for this show so far. Yeah, man. We've had a B minus, a B minus, a B plus, and a C plus, and now an A minus. So this will definitely bump up our average for this series. I think we were sitting at a B minus right now for the Acolyte. So this A minus will definitely help a little bit for sure. So yeah, A minus, our average for episode number 5. Do you guys agree, disagree? What would you certainly grade this episode? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section box below as we wrap up. And I'll go ahead and put timestamps on this video too if you guys want to come back and revisit it for some of our thoughts and our discussion. We'll probably be dropping clips of this throughout the rest of the week as well over on social media. So let's wrap up here. Scotty says, thank y'all for providing some entertainment and good conversation while I've been working. Hey, and well, you know what? Maybe we'll look forward to your episode review too, Scotty, for sure. So yeah, but yeah, let us know your guys' thoughts in the comment section box below. Before we leave, let's get people some opportunities to shine here. Crystal, if people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter and at YouTube under Crystal Kyber. I also make fandom merch at getbadfeeling.com. So we have a Star Wars drop right now if you want to check that out. And yeah, thanks for having me.
As always, Crystal. Hopefully we can have you next week. I know your schedule's a little bit busy, but we definitely need you for the next few episodes if you can make it as we round things off. But you just keep me posted. Will, if people want to find you on social media, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find our show at Scene and Nerd on Twitter. As far as threads, it's scene_n_nerd. Of course, you can find our website, www.sceneandnerdpodcast.com. See there here on the screen. We're in the middle of our Dragons and Soups reviews right now, focusing on House of the Dragon and The Boys. So check us out wherever you get your podcast.
Excellent, man. Excellent. And Stu, buddy, where can people find you?
You guys can find me at TurboStew01 over on Instagram. And of course, you guys can find me here at A Plus Hero Report.
And guys, if you want to follow us at A Plus Opinions everywhere on social media, we also have a TikTok at Hero Report. If you'd like a forum community, we do have a Discord for you guys. There is a link in the description box below. Follow us there. And look, if you want to help us out anyway, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification. It definitely does go a long way to help out our algorithm. Feel free to share our videos if you'd like to as well. But that'll do it for us, guys. We're going to be back for you guys next weekend. Again, live every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Central Time. So we'll see you guys then. But until next time, do us a big favor. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep it A+. May the Force be with you. We'll talk to you later. Bye.